Thank you to Eamon and the whole board. Eamon just signed up for his second tour of duty as IRFA president. So some people say that shows a dedication to industry, and some people think that shows a need for some help. We'll just put it that way. But a trade association can't really operate without an engaged board, and we're very blessed at IRFA to have that. So thanks on behalf of the staff to all of our IRFA board members. And thanks to all of you for being here today. It's been an interesting time, and I think we've got a lot to talk about. But before we do that, I do want to give a shout out right here at the beginning to Lucy Norton. Lucy's our managing director at IRFA, and more than any other person, Lucy makes all of this happen. In fact, Lucy makes about 98% of this happen. So let's have a big round of applause for Lucy putting on another great summit. Also like to recognize our other IRFA staff members of Grant Menke and Cassie Walter. Cassie's run around dealing with the media and helping us. Grant will be up here on stage later and is out at our booth. So we really appreciate the contributions they do. So we just finished year one of the Trump presidency. And I have to say, I don't necessarily get into the obsession that some in the media have of every little thing Trump says or every little tweet he sends out. But it is fair to say that what we've come through the last year and what we're probably going to go through in the next year has been greatly impacted by the president and those in his administration. So before we get into that, though, let's see where we're at. 2017, we had record U.S. ethanol production. We had record U.S. ethanol consumption, and we had record exports of ethanol from this country. That's pretty remarkable if you think about it. Now, the story was not quite as bright for biodiesel, due largely to the expired federal tax credit, combined with some illegally subsidized imports coming into the United States from Argentina for most of last year. The industry did take a step back in 2017 compared to 2016. But here on the Iowa front, let's see if we can get this thing to work. We had a pretty good year for ethanol. We had 43 ethanol plants produce a record 4.2 billion gallons. To put that in context for the farmers, that's about give or take, that's about 1.5 billion bushels of Iowa corn that are turned into ethanol and feed co-products. That keeps Iowa number one in ethanol production and about 27% of overall U.S. production. Now, mirroring national trends, the Iowa biodiesel refineries produced a little bit less, about 286 million gallons, which was just under last year's record. But we're still number one in biodiesel production by a wide margin, and actually our percentage went up slightly of total U.S. production. We also benefit from diverse feedstocks here in Iowa, and that's something with biodiesel that I don't think we probably talk enough about. Now, soybeans, let's see. Whoops, hit the wrong button. Sorry, there's your biodiesel stats. Soybean oil remained the most popular feedstock for biodiesel in Iowa, and it actually went up just a little bit to 74%. But we still use significant amounts of animal fats, distillers corn oil and use cooking oil and canola oil. So if you think about it, biodiesel production in Iowa boosts farmers, boosts ethanol plants, boosts ranchers, and even restaurants. So that's a pretty remarkable contribution they have across a wide part of the industry. Now in 2017, we saw the first widespread expansion of the Iowa ethanol and biodiesel industry really in about a decade. We had several projects come online, about 300 million new gallons of ethanol, about 100 million new gallons of biodiesel over the last year, maybe year to 18 months. And so we are now sitting at 400 million gallons of biodiesel capacity, and over 4.3, and by the end of this next year, probably 4.5 billion gallons of ethanol capacity here in Iowa. So what's that mean for Iowa? These numbers here come from what we've done this year. Not those bigger numbers that we're capable of doing, but just what we did in 2017. And you can see we've added $5 billion to GDP in Iowa, $2.4 billion of new household income. Most of that goes into farmers and the employees. And then throughout the economy, both direct and indirect, we support nearly 47,000 jobs. And I think Eamon was right. You know, if the administration wants to look at some of what's going on with one refinery where actually it didn't even have anything to do with us, the thing was going broke anyway. But even if they bought into that lie, they need to realize that there are tens of thousands of farm families in Iowa and around the Midwest that are doing an awful lot for the economy out here, and they really don't want to pull the rug out from underneath that, in my opinion. So I guess as I stand before you today, we have to ask a question. We got all this new production capacity. Where are we going to put it? Where are we going to actually market all of this? And that's a question that the Trump administration and others are going to have a big impact on. So as we look forward to that, I think we just start with where we're at. And as I stand before you today, I think that Iowa's renewable fuels industry is ready to do more than just being kind of a survival mode. I think that we're ready to thrive. We're just months away from wrapping up that expansion. We've got overflowing feedstocks. We've got new technologies and new pathways to open up new production. We've seen domestic and foreign market opportunities out there that are within our grasp, and we need to take advantage of it. And so despite some of the doom and gloom you hear on Capitol Hill or from some of the oil folks, I think that renewable fuels and biofuels in general, and Iowa specifically, are not only going to survive, that we're going to thrive over the next several years. And it's not going to be easy, it never has been. We're going to need a little help, but after all, who wouldn't when you're going up against an industry that's had over a century of subsidies? But the opportunities are there, and I think Iowa's poised to lead the way. I mean, after all, look at what Iowa farmers did producing near record crops on a year last year when Mother Nature wasn't all that helpful, quite frankly. We've seen Iowa producers expand and innovate. We've seen Iowa elected officials drive the policy debate both at the state and federal level. We've seen Iowa retailers step up and become some of the biggest proponents and retailers of higher blends of ethanol and biodiesel. And we've seen Iowans from our industry step up and take leading roles in pushing for new markets in China and Mexico and all around the globe. So, thriving, it could be easier or it could be harder, but I think that's what we're going to do. And so let's dig into what some of those outstanding questions are that will impact where we go. So first, the RFS. If you think back to last year, I have to be honest with you. I don't think the RFS was on a very good path initially under the Trump administration. We were fighting a point of obligation battle. What I was abbreviated point of obligation is POO, P-O-O, so I always call it a big stinking pile of poo. We had the NOTA, which we'll get into more. We had export RIN schemes. We had the oil companies advocating for the 9.7% cap on biofuels that they always do. And I really don't think we're headed in the right direction. When the EPA administrator pictured there in Iowa, I apologize, that picture's a little fuzzy, but they wouldn't let me get closer to him. Took that off my phone. But really until the president stepped in and kind of said, hey, we made commitments, we're going to follow through on them, get this RFS straightened out. And so, quite frankly, they're not here, but some of their staff are here with us today. I think I'd just like to take a second to give a huge thank you to our champions, to our heroes. And if they would not have stepped up and got the president engaged to save the RFS, I think we'd be having a very different conversation here. So let's have a huge round of applause for Senator Chuck Grassley, Joni Ernst, and our Governor Kim Reynolds. Now, if you think about it, so the question is, we have a new round of RFS numbers going to come out, proposed numbers for the next round of the rule. So what are they going to be? Are they going to be flatlined and kind of that survival mode we talk about? Or are they going to recognize that we've got a lot more capacity to produce American biodiesel and American cellulosic ethanol and really give us a chance to thrive? If you look up here at the chart, those green boxes are the ones that came out in this last rule, the first Pruitt EPA rule. If you look at it, every one of those green boxes is flatlined or below the year before. That's not thriving. We've got to get the EPA back and to embrace what we can do. In the fourth quarter of 2017, on an annualized basis, we produced 2.1 billion gallons of biodiesel in this country, not counting a drop of imports. And yet our number under the RFS for 2 years later is the same 2.1 that we produced in the fourth quarter of last year. We've got to recognize that. Here in Iowa, we've got a dozen or more ethanol plants that are waiting to produce cellulosic ethanol. They are ready to go. They just need a market signal. And we need that to come from the EPA. So going forward, I think quite frankly, we had the right to expect more out of this rule last year than we got. And I think going forward, we need to demand more next year to unleash this potential. After all, if the EPA looks at this, maybe they just need to re-embrace what they themselves have said the whole purpose of the RFS is, to increase the use of renewable fuels every year. And recently, the court system, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in D.C., put it even better. when they looked at the illegal waivers of the RFS that were done under the last couple years of the Obama administration. By setting annual renewable fuel volume requirements increase progressively, not flatline, increase progressively each year, Congress adopted a market-forcing policy intended to overcome constraints in the market by creating demand pressure to increase consumption. So the question is out there, is the EPA going to embrace the meaning of the RFS and allow us to thrive and to produce these fuels in America, or are they going to take more of a status quo? That's one of the big questions that faces our industry. Next, we look at E15. That's also before the EPA. Are they going to grant the long overdue RVP parity for E15 that Eamon talked about that will let us sell that fuel year round? Or are they going to just punt the ball down the road and leave our retailers with one arm tied behind their back? E15 is higher octane. It's less expensive. According to Growth Energy, we've driven 3 billion miles on trouble-free miles on E15. So go out in that hallway by our booth and please add your name to that letter to Administrator Pruitt saying grant E15 RVP parity now so we can increase this and lower the price of RINs and help consumers and help our retailers. Here in Iowa, just 2 years ago, we had 40 E15 stations. Today, 151. Year on year, the last 2 years, we have data for an E15 here in Iowa. Sales went up 189%. Folks, this thing is ready to grow. And so also stop by the pink, our booth, and we've got our big pink pledge. And if you sign that, as Eamon said, we're going to donate $1. Basically, what you're saying is, I will use some E15 in 2018. If you sign that pledge, we're going to send $1 to the Hormel Institute, who's doing groundbreaking cancer research, including on breast cancer. And also, there's an opportunity for a free will donation if you'd like to go above and beyond the $1. So we've got a free E15. Next, trade. There's a big question there with the Trump administration. On one hand, let's give them some credit. I think they really engaged with the industry, particularly in biodiesel, down in Argentina. Wait, where am I at? Yeah, over here. The one in the middle. These are not to scale. It's just what I could find and fit in there. I'm not exactly a PowerPoint expert. And they really said, hey, we have this illegally subsidized, and I think eventually they'll find illegally dumped, Argentina and other places, biodiesel coming to the United States and really hurting our producers. And it's unfair. It violates the trade agreements. And they stepped up and they worked with the industry, and we've addressed that situation, and we've already started to see the illegally subsidized imports back off and U.S. biodiesel take off. So that's been great. They've been working pretty close with us in China. China threw up a barrier. They threw up some tariffs and really shut off last year and the year before what had been our largest export market for ethanol. Now, the good news here is even though we have not yet got China to remove that tariff, corn ethanol is so darn competitive in the world marketplace that as of December, there is a veritable armada of ships carrying ethanol headed to China today. A veritable armada, and it's not because that tariff's gone away. So we still need to work to get the tariff away. It's still unfair. It's still not necessary, but we are at least opening that market back up. Then Brazil threw up tariffs this last year. Completely out of the blue, completely crazy, and have knocked out what after China had become our largest export market. Now they're signaling, hey, maybe we want to do something there. So we need to work with the Trump trade team and get this done. We need to open up China, we need to open up Brazil, and the opportunities go all around the world. But on the other hand, there's NAFTA. Anyone in Iowa should know, and if you don't, then here, take some notes. NAFTA's been pretty darn good to Iowa. We send ethanol and biodiesel to Canada. We're on the verge of being able to send quite a bit of ethanol to Mexico. We already send a lot, tons, literally tons of distillers' grains to Mexico. And so if NAFTA gets pulled out, all of a sudden you have like 18% tariffs on some of this stuff. That's going to impact us. So one of the questions going forward is, will the Trump trade team continue to work with us and even step up that game and help us boost exports, which would be huge to our economy, or are they going to, go down the other road and pull some things out that are not very helpful to us? Now, looking outside, there's a few more at the Trump administration, but I'm going to skip them for now. Looking outside the Trump administration, we have a new battle that just popped up here. We knew about it coming, but it just officially popped up here a couple weeks ago. And that is the petroleum marketers of America have said, we don't want you to be able to market E15 the way you retailers in the audience want to market it. We want to tie your hands behind the back. They've noticed it's growing, they don't like it, and so they sent a letter to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, saying, we want you to limit the way we market E15. We want you to tie those people's hands. And so one of the questions that's out there for us is, will the FTC allow us to fairly market our fuels, just like petroleum fuels are marketed, or will they become the latest tool in the big oil monopoly? So what did PMAA say? And it's really hard to argue with their searing circular logic here. It is not because it is not. Well, I guess that settles it. I mean, if you think about it, they're telling us what it isn't. It's just silly. What we really have seen is that, so they're saying that it confuses, right there, it can mislead consumers. So with your participation, and yes, please, I would honestly like some participation here, I would like to do a test. Everyone please look up at the screen. This is a picture of a pump from Quickstar, because they especially, PMAA doesn't like the term unleaded 88. So here we have 3 marketing terms: unleaded, unleaded 88, and premium unleaded, okay? We've got 3 octane stickers, 87, 88, 91. Everybody with me so far? And right here in the middle, we've got the E15 sticker that I had up before that says, hey, 2001 and newer on-road vehicles. All right, now, who out there today, please applaud if right now you're so confused you have no clue what fuel to buy. Okay, we got one person over here. Thank you for being honest. Now, please applaud if you can go up there and make that fuel choice for yourself. All right. Media could write that down so they don't just take my word for it. I think we get it. I don't think this is misleading. I think the next thing, and to be honest with you, I honestly don't know why PMA put this in their letter, but we really get to the heart of the matter. The branded retailers are not allowed to sell E15, and they're losing customers to people who are selling it, and they want to fight this and to slow down E15 any way they can. I mean, look at this. A few retailers use E15 pricing as a marketing tool to draw consumers into their station. Those capitalists. This practice puts nearby competitors who do not sell E15 at a significant competitive disadvantage. Well, frankly, I certainly hope so. So, I mean, what we have here is, are we going to be able to market it, or are they going to try to tie our hands? So I thought, hey, let's see what they do, right? We talk about a fair and level playing field and regulatory, so let's see what they do. Now, I apologize, this is a fuzzy picture, but the price on top is 5 or 6 cents lower than the price on the bottom. One's cash, one's credit. It's almost as if that station is trying to lure consumers in with a lower price, isn't it? Let's go on to this, V-Power. Well, I can tell you, I've looked in the FTC, weights and measures, there's no definition of V-Power. I don't know what that is. Okay, there's no definition of V-Power. What kind of misleading marketing term is that? Here's a great one. See that 86? I'll go back over here. See that little 86 button? 86 octane gasoline there's not a single engine on the road today designed to run on 87 octane. On-road, off-road, big truck, small car, lawnmower, doesn't matter. And yet PMAA's members in certain parts of the country routinely sell 86 octane gasoline, which isn't covered in any warranty statement, and PMAA defends that practice. Yeah, they're really looking out for the consumers, aren't they? Now here's my favorite. I went to this BP station because I saw silver, and I'm thinking, silver? For $2.67, that's not bad. So I pumped a little, I looked. It didn't look silver, so I took a sample, I sent it to one of our plants, and they tested it. There was no silver in that gasoline. That is completely misleading and false advertising. And ultimate, too, there's no definition of ultimate. What's ultimate? Nobody knows. So here's another one. Exxon does this, Chevron does this. They use Supreme. What is that? I know what a Supreme pizza is, but I'm not sure what Supreme gasoline is, because there's no definition in any federal agency of or state agency that I'm aware of that tells us what Supreme is. So if they want truth in advertising, let's give them truth in advertising. This is what the gas price sign would look like if we took the ethanol out. Okay, folks? Now, for some of you who don't know those acronyms, that's okay. I can't say them from up here. Talk to your neighbors. They'll fill you out. They'll fill you in. And as long as we're going to have truth in advertising, then let's do a benzene sticker. Remember that E15 sticker we had up there? Okay, there are oil companies that would rather put octane in their fuel using benzene, a known human carcinogen, than ethanol. If they want to do that, shouldn't the consumers know? Shouldn't the consumers be able to go to a station that chooses lower benzene fuel as opposed to higher benzene fuel? they demanded that our E15 sticker be Halloween orange. Try to scare people. How about we get a benzene sticker and we make it blood red? How about that? If they want to play that game, they better be careful because they are not exempt from what they're doing. So let's move on to Congress. Eamon talked about the need to extend the biodiesel tax credit, the cellulosics tax credit, and so we really do have a question out there. Is Congress going to extend these tax credits, or are they just going to be satisfied with the goodies they've already thrown out to oil? Did you know this? At the end of the year, the fee that the oil companies pay for the federal government to clean up their messes ended? They stopped it. $500 million no longer being funded for the federal cleanups of the oil company spills. And in the tax bill, did you know this? The recent tax bill, I know we were all trying to figure out, wait a minute, my rate went down, but my exemptions and all this stuff, and, tying ourselves up a notch. Did you know in the middle of that they changed how foreign income for oil companies is accounted? So for decades, they've put it in this box, taxed at this rate, but now for no reason other than the powerful lobbyists of the oil industry, they moved it into a different box and shaved another several $billion off the tax bills of our oil companies. And that's on top of the century of subsidies where they get billions of dollars a year and other tax preferences. So we can throw billions and billions and billions of dollars at oil, but we can't extend a tax credit for the young industries of biodiesel and cellulose. We need this to happen. Now the good news is there's an extenders bill that it's in, and I think that extenders bill is going to pass. I can't promise you that. I don't know the timing of it. But so I think that if they pass an extenders bill, we're going to be in it. But I don't know the timing. And every day we wait is a day the market doesn't know what to do with these fuels. And as I've said, and what are these fuels? I mean, look at biodiesel. New study just came out, USDA, other agencies, 72% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions compared to petroleum. Not too shabby. This is a young industry that needs long-term stability, not just a one-year extension, but ultimately, we'll take that right now, let me be clear, but ultimately a long-term extension to get its feet underneath it, to build out, to mature, to get the infrastructure out so that it can compete. Oil is on its 105th year of continuous, permanent tax preferences in our tax code. We need to give biodiesel a chance to compete, and we need Congress to act. Cellulosic ethanol. Same difference. Very young industry, needs the tax credit. I think, quite frankly, if we extend this tax credit, with some of the companies you've seen on the screen here today, and these are in Iowa, I think, here's a prediction. If we get this tax credit done pretty quickly, I think you will see more gallons of cellulosic ethanol produced in Iowa in 2018 than in the rest of the country all the previous years. I think that's how poised we are to kick down the door on cellulosic ethanol. But we've got to have that market signal. People are ready to do it. Now to our good friend from Texas. Trump's election had many impacts on us, but it also impacted how other industries viewed their threats and opportunities. And so we saw the oil industry really step up their attacks on us. Remember, we talked about earlier on the regulatory approach. They threw POO at us. They threw NOTA at us. They threw the 9.7 cap at us. They threw the export RIN scheme at us. I'm not going to go into all that. But they did all those things, and we fought them off. Now, I think those efforts are going to continue, but I also think they're going to ramp up, and we can see it, their efforts in Congress. And so our good friend from Texas recently took Bill Northey hostage. He went to his leader, Mitch McConnell, in the Senate. He went to the President of the United States, and he said, I've got a win-win solution. Win-win. I read that in approximately 1,278 press stories. So I'm pretty sure he said it. He goes, I've got a win-win. It will help the refiners with their concerns, but it'll be good for biodiesel, but no one will sit down with me, so I have to take Bill Northey hostage. And the president asked our senators to sit down with Ted Cruz, and their staffs got together. And our senators went in there and said, hey, if you truly have a win-win, we are here in good faith, we will listen. And that was kind of how that meeting ended. So they had another meeting. They said, well, hey, if you got a true win-win, then tell us what it is. You keep saying you have a win-win, put it on the table. What did Ted Cruz do? He rolled out the 10-cent RFS waiver scheme. Folks, there's not a single person in Washington, D.C., whether they like us or don't like us, that thinks that's a win-win. It's a joke. It's not serious. And quite frankly, when he was forced to put his cards on the table, it became very clear that the emperor had no clothes. And we've reached a point where I think, given that people listened to him in good faith, gave him an opportunity to put a win-win on the table, and then he put something out that would eviscerate this industry. It wasn't even mildly entertaining. It would eviscerate this industry. I think it's time to free Northey. I think we need to send a message. We have a picture of our good Secretary of Agriculture right out in this corner by the restrooms past registration. It says free Northey. It looks like this. Stop by, take your picture, post it to your Facebook, tweet it out. We need to send a message that it is time to free Northey. Ted Cruz had his opportunity, and he didn't have anything to offer. Now, unless my staff tells me, we're good? Okay, so the good news here is we've reached the last question I'm going to address today. That's the cue for applause, right? Yay, Monte's going to shut up. Recently, leading up to Christmas, I asked my daughter, what do you want? What do you want for Christmas? And she looked at me and she said, a Tesla. And you could hear the palm of my hand hit my forehead. Clearly, I've got a little work to do. You know, maybe a little FFV under the Christmas tree somewhere. But she went on to explain that all of her friends like Tesla. When they get older, they want to drive them because they're cool and they're clean. Now, I think biofuels actually have a lot in common with electric vehicles in terms of our ability to reduce emissions, provide consumers things that they want in terms of mobility as well as the clean features they want, different things like that. I can certainly stand here today and envision a future where our future and electric cars are somewhat intertwined, where we're working together for clean transportation. On the other hand, I don't think it's unfair to say we want a level playing field. Just like we talk about with oil, we want a level playing field so our fuels can compete. I would like to have a level playing field with electric cars. So one of the questions facing our industry is, are electric vehicles going to be subject to the same scrutiny for their entire environmental footprint as biofuels are? Or are we just going to assume that the batteries for them are made out of pixie dust and never have to be disposed of? Because that's how the current regulations look at it. They don't look at where it came from, where the power comes from, what happens to the battery afterwards. Now, some of you will remember that our industry is subject to a little environmental penalty called international indirect land use change. For those of you who don't know what it is, see me in the hallway afterwards and we'll hold like a 30-minute tutorial. It's kind of crazy. But basically the notion is because we use some crops here for biofuels, somewhere halfway around the globe, someone has to chop down a tree. Even though our acres planted to crops in this country has gone down while biofuels has gone up. So even though we're using less acres, somehow these acres magically have to be replaced somewhere else. The science was crazy to begin with. The numbers have gotten better. But that's how far they go to look at us. Okay, that's how far they go to look at us. So isn't it fair to say, where does that battery come from? Isn't it fair to say, well, let's look at cobalt mining in Africa? And again, I'm not bashing electric cars. My daughter may very well drive that electric car, especially if she pays for it. But right now there is financial incentives and regulatory bias that's distorting the marketplace, and we need to have a level playing field. We need to say, is this really where we want stuff to come from? How is this factored in? Where is their international impact assessment? And again, I think we could be very aligned with electric cars going forward, but I don't think it's bad to say, what are you going to do with these? These are first generation Prius batteries. What's the plural for Prius? Priuses? Prii? Anyway, these are their batteries, waiting for something to be done with them. These are real features. I don't think these things can be overcome. Electric vehicles, they're going to deal with this stuff. It's going to be fine, but let's not pretend they don't exist. When my daughter makes that car purchase, she should have a full understanding. She should have the whole truth, not just a shiny poster on a wall saying that this is a zero-emission vehicle. There's no such thing as a zero-emission vehicle. Everything gets power from somewhere. All that material comes from somewhere. Let's have a fair and honest accounting of it, because Lord knows they certainly put our industry through the ringer. So how the Trump administration and others answer these questions will help to determine whether the biofuels industry will simply survive or whether it will thrive. If it thrives, we're going to have lower fuel prices for consumers, higher commodity prices for farmers, green-collar jobs, cleaner air, less carbon, less foreign oil. So there's a lot of good things we can do if we do that. Now, we may not like the answer to some of those questions that I teed up here today. We might not even like the answer to many of them. And I do worry about that. But I also sleep pretty good at night because I am confident that ultimately this industry is going to drive. The answer to those questions may make it an easier path for us. It may make it a harder path for us. But I think the destination remains the same. And that's that this industry is going to drive. is going to thrive. Because simply put, biofuels have the most positive attributes of any liquid fuel. Biofuels have what consumers are looking for, and biofuels will thrive. Thanks for being here today.